It's a real treat to be joined on Between the Lines by Indiana's poet laureate, Norbert Krapf, who will be reading from his various works at different library programs throughout the month of November. The first of which being on Saturday, November 15th at 2 p.m. here at Central Library. Norbert, thanks for joining us on Between the Lines.
It's a pleasure to be in this beautiful place.
It is that indeed. And tell us about the work of being a poet laureate.
Well, the poet laureate of Indiana is a sort of the ambassador for poetry in this state, and my obligations are to go into the schools and talk to students and read to them, maybe get them to write as well as read poetry, to go to libraries and give readings and talks. And other kinds of venues. I've been in a nursing home in my hometown. I've been in county museums, and I'll be in other libraries. And I also have created a new series at the American Cabaret Theater by invitation called Together Again, Music and Poetry, which is one of my obsessions, you might say, is to bring poetry back together with music. And I have a CD with the wonderful jazz pianist, composer Monica Herzig also. So it's been a very rich time, and I've been very busy because I've had 3 publications in about 9 months. A new book of Indiana poems that's a retrospective of a selection of 175 written the past 36 years. A childhood memoir about growing up in Jasper and Du Bois County in a German Catholic community, a prose book. And then the CD with Monica, which is titled Imagine Indiana in Music and Words. So I'm in motion.
Sounds wonderful.
But it's a great opportunity. Yeah. I retired from teaching, and I taught for 34 years on Long Island near New York City at Long Island University, the CW Post Campus, where I directed a poetry center for 18 years and was their poet laureate for 4 years, part of the time after I left.
Now, the designation of being a poet laureate, how long is that in effect?
It's usually a 2-year position. I think mine technically is 1.5 years with the possibility of being renewed for a little bit more, depending on how long it takes to select a successor.
Again, Norbert Krapf is with us. He's Indiana's poet laureate. He'll be reading at various libraries throughout the month of November. We also want to mention the new Indianapolis Airport Terminal. You have a special place in that. Tell us about that.
Yes, I was lucky enough to have a poem selected to become part of a beautiful stained glass panel by the English artist Martin Donlan. He was selected along with I think 15 or so other artists. He was commissioned, and he selected 5 poems in an open competition and another that outside of that competition. And there are 6 absolutely gorgeous windows with poems or parts of poems as part of them etched into the glass, made according to the medieval formula in Munich, Germany.
Wow. And where is this located?
Mine is A22.
A20. Remember that when we start visiting the new
terminal.
terminal.
A and B gates, and I'm at the very end of A.
Okay.
It's brightly colored orange and red, very earthy, very beautiful, I think.
Well, tell us just in a moment about your poetry of late. Are you focusing a lot more on Indiana now that you're the Indiana Poet Laureate?
Well, I've been focusing on Indiana for the 37 years that I've written, but I've written more Indiana. I think it's kind of instinctive. I've written more poems set in Indiana than anywhere else, though I have a book of poems set in Germany. We lived there for 2 different years, and also a book of poems set in Long Island where we lived for 34 years. But even in the Long Island poems, there's a lot of coming back home. I'm a homecoming poet often.
Okay. Yeah. Well, tell us about the work that you're about to read. We have a surprise for our viewers. You're going to read from one of your new works.
I thought I would read one of the new poems. This is 175 poems written during that 36-year period, but also 40 recent ones written since I moved back to Indiana in 2004. And this is called The Local News.
And which book is this from?
This is from Bloodroot Indiana Poems, just out from IU Press.
Okay, and we're going to present now Norbert Krapf reading from this work.
I'm going to read a poem titled The Local News, which is also the title of the last section of 40 new poems in this book, Bloodroot Indiana Poems. And this goes back to childhood in Jasper, Indiana, and Du Bois County in the Hill Country. When the midday meal was about over, we children knew it was time to hush. She grew taut as a high-intensity wire ready to spark. The local news was about to come on WITZ AM, our local station. Who died and where and when would he be laid out? Who was admitted to the hospital and for what? Who was arrested for drunk driving? Who got hauled into court for what? Whose baby was born and how much did it weigh? The national and international economies might dip or bounce. Joseph Stalin might be laid out in his famous coffin on the front page. Planes may be shot down over Korea. But the bigger picture, the greater story, was always and forever the local news. The news at noon. When the local news was over, she would relax and say, "Okay, you kids can talk again now," and she moved on with her chores.